everybody, my name is Kyle969, welcome back to another video. Today in this one is going to be another tier list video, and in this one it's going to be my tier list on meta staples post Battle of Legends Monster Mayhem. Yeah, Monster Mayhem released later this week unless you're in Europe, Africa, Middle East, Oceania, and most parts of Latin America. It does release. Man, you guys got fucked over. So if you live exactly in the United States, Canada, or any part of Latin America that releases the English version of the cards in your in that area, you're fine. But for the most of the world, you're not getting this product anytime soon. Man, you guys kind of got fucked over. I apologize for you guys. But will it change the staples whatsoever? Not necessarily. The only like playable thing is like obviously you have new Punk stuff, new Orcust, and new Dragon Mage stuff, but like Orcust pretty much dies to the same staples that are already being played right now, and then like Dragon Mage might be a rogue deck, but it still pretty much dies to the same staples as well. Same thing with Punk as well. So yeah, I shouldn't change the staples that much, but the reason why I wanted to make this video today is because the last time I made a staples tier list, a lot of opinions on the cards I've ranked in that has changed since then. So that's the reason why I wanted to make a more updated version of this tier list. So yeah, without further ado, we have a lot of cards to talk about. I think 69 cards is what we have to talk about today. So we're gonna get straight into it. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Our tier list here is most main decks, some main decks, most side decks, some side decks, and niche. Pretty much just not in this format is what niche is. So yeah, starting off with the Charmy cards. Obviously, you are going to have to play Fua in the main deck. It's just the best Charmy card in the game. It's our maxi replacement right now. It is play aroundable, which is nice, but you know, a lot of people are still going to main deck this card for sure. Pirellia is also in most main decks right now. You can also argue most side decks if you really want to as well, but you can see a lot of lists also on main deck Pirellia as well, just because honestly the Charming cards are, even though they are somewhat play aroundable, it is just a lingering floodgate on your opponent's turn, which is good because it makes your opponent play weirdly and maybe not end on their full combo, and that's what you kind of want them to do, because if they end on a weird little field, you can still break that field and try to OTK them on the next turn. So yeah, it makes sense for these two to be most main decks, because Fua just is for every deck. And then Pirellia, like, you can think of scenario like Malice doesn't necessarily play into this card, but it makes it where they can't go into like the backup and the wizard stuff, because that plays directly into the Pirellia and stuff. But yeah, Pirellia is still very good. Meows is probably most side decks, or you can maybe argue some side decks as well, but I'm gonna go with most side decks just because people are just like, okay, if I verse the Malice matchup, that's an easy swap out of Pirellia and Meows, or they just play both as well and just load up on all the Charmy cards, which works as well. So I think this is probably your good ranking for the Charmy cards. Fua and Pirellia probably in most main decks. You can still argue this if you want to as well, and then Meow's in most side decks or some side decks. Again, you can argue that as well, but I'm gonna put it in most side decks. Now onto the proper hand traps. Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, I'm sorry, is always going to be in most main decks because it's an out to the Charmy cards. That's really it. If you asked my opinion, I actually don't like Ash that much, but I think you have to play it just so you can stop the Charmy card. So unfortunately, I think this does belong in most main decks. Even though I don't think it's as powerful as people think it is, it's still going to stop the Charmy cards, and that's all you necessarily need it to do, is stop the Charmy card. So yeah, it deserves to be in most main decks. Spooky Dogwood, it's a time card. I would always want to put it in niche, but there are some players that will put it in their side decks just to play around time, so I'll put it in some side decks. Ghost Bell and Haunted Mansion, seeing quite a lot of play. I will actually put this in some main decks. I always believe like Ghost Bell, the problem with it is you can think of like better cards to put over it, like Bestials are probably a little bit better than this and stuff like that. But in this format, this is actually a very decent card against exactly, well, I guess Malice and Mitsurugi both play into this, right? Mitsurugi, like what, you can Ghost Bell Prayers, even if they don't tribute summon. You can Ghost Bell any of the fusion monsters, or any of the ritual monsters, sorry, that gets tributed because they have to special back from the graveyard. Even if they can't summon, they're still a part of that effect, so you can still Ghost Bell and also prevent the search. That's something that the Bestials can't do with the Mitsurugi, is like, they can Bestial the ritual from grave. Sure, they don't get the summon back, but they still get the search, while Ghost Bell just stops the entire effect, which is nice as well. So I do believe this is in some main decks. Also in Malice, like, being able to stop March Air, or being able to stop the like field spell from banishing from graveyard, or even like Wizard, being able to stop Wizard is pretty nice as well. So like this has its uses, and it's very rightly so deserves to be in some main decks. Ghost Organ Snow Rabbit. So this is gonna be a little weird. Last video I was also like this as well. Ghost Org, I think the problem with it, it's not that good this format. Like, obviously you can think of like scenarios where this does come up, but in all honesty, I don't think you'll see people play this card. I'm actually going to put this in niche. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad card, don't get me wrong. Like I said, you can still think of ways of using this, like against Malice, like hitting their Link 2, whatever, like Splash Mage or something like that, does do a lot, but overall, you would want to have other cards that is not Ghost Organ Snow Rabbit, to be honest with you. So I'm going to put this in niche. Maybe a little harsh, but that's just my opinion on that. Ghost Reapers and Winter Cherries, to be honest with you, one of the decks doesn't even need its extra deck, and the other deck can cycle its banished cards back into the deck with like Hard Cryptor for Malice, and then Mitsurugi does not need its extra deck, so yeah, it deserves to be in niche as well. Effect Veiler, this is a little weird as well. I don't necessarily think this is the greatest in the world right now. I think you can argue there's a lot better hand traps than Effect Veiler. Like, I'm tempted to put it down here, but I think it deserves to be in some main decks. It's going to be like the bottom of some main decks for sure. But yeah, I honestly don't think this is necessarily the greatest in the world in this format. Infinite Impermanence. This is one of those cards that I have changed my opinions on. So in the last one, or like most meta staple tier lists, I always love to put Imperm in most main decks. I think it's just a really good card. But I think in this format, and specifically this format, I honestly don't think Imperm is the greatest card in this format. Now, I still think you'll probably see it in some main decks, because Imperm is still a ridiculously good hand trap. I'm actually going to put it like up here, but you can make an argument that Imperm just isn't as good as it used to be. Like it's not the greatest against Malice, because a lot of the time they're playing off of 2-card combos anyway, so the Imperm doesn't necessarily stop that. Against Mitsurugi, like, Imperm isn't the greatest against that either, because if they start with Habakiri, then they're never really playing into Imperm, especially if they're like on the Mitsurugi Rizal version. It just isn't the greatest in the world. Like, this is still, like, you can still think of a lot of things. Like, Imperm is still a very good card, but you can think of way better cards that are in this format compared to what Imperm is in this format. So even though I love this card and I love putting it in most main decks, I'm actually going to put it into some main decks for this format. Droll and Lockbird. Yeah, this one is definitely not changed though. This will definitely go into most main decks, especially if you're on a cheaper version of build. Like if you can't afford like the Pirellia that's super expensive right now, you would play like Fua plus Droll is very popular as well, just because Droll kind of hits every deck with maybe the exception of Malice, but even then you can think of scenarios where Droll actually does somewhat hurt Malice. Now Malice can still do combo under Droll, but you know, not being able to get your searches does somewhat hurt in Malice. So I think Droll deserves to be in most main decks. A lot of people are actually thinking wanting to ban this card. I'm neither here or there. Like, if it gets banned, it gets banned, but I'm not going to advocate for it getting banned either. So Droll, yeah, deserves to be in most main decks for sure. Nibiru, the Primal Being, also you can make an argument can go into most main decks. I'm going to put it in at the top of some main decks, just because there are, like, some players are on, like, sometimes Nib isn't the greatest in the world. No. I'm going to put it in most main decks. Nib, I think, is actually very decent, I guess, especially against, like, Malice. Like, sure, like, if you Nibiru them, they still have, like, the back row and stuff like that. But nibbing, like, a Malice player before they get to, like, the allied code or even, like, a Bomber Dragon play is good, because it prevents you where you only have to deal with the GC06 after that, and that's pretty much it. And, like the March Air, obviously, and the MTB07. But that's a lot more manageable compared to, like, having the allied code or Firewall or Bomber Dragon setup kind of thing as well. So I think this deserves to be in most main decks. Like, also, like, against Mitsurugi, you can argue isn't the greatest in the world either, just because, you know, you don't want to attribute that. But sometimes, you know, some Mitsurugi players do get a little greedy, and being able to nib him is very nice, and just being able to deal with Murakumo is the only thing you have to deal with is still pretty fine. I don't know. I'm going to put this in some main deck. I think the fact that Mitsurugi exists makes it where Nib isn't the greatest in the world, but against any other deck, I think Nib is actually really insane. Maybe not against Fiendsmith, but I think Nib is actually very decent. It makes it where they don't end on their full combo. They only on like a half like combo type of board, which is all you really need if you want to try to break in this format, especially against Orcus. It doesn't seem like the terrible thing either. Dimension Shifter, if you can play it, you're probably going to main deck it, but this card is very much falling off. Not that many people are on this card anymore, especially since it is at 1 now. Now, if you can play it, you are going to main deck this for sure. So this is still going to put it in some main decks, but not that many decks can take advantage of this card. But you're never going to side deck this card. If you're going to play it, you're going to main deck it for sure. Now onto the Gamma package. Yeah, I think you're still pretty niche for me. Gamma and Delta. It's just not this format, unfortunately. Especially with Gamma at 1. It's just not for this format, unfortunately. So, even though I think this is a cool little tech card, I'm still going to put it in niche. Same thing with Orange Light. There's not a fairy deck in the format. So, yeah, very much in niche as well. Artifact Lancia, you are in most side decks for sure. This is just like a Malice layout. Even though Malice can now play through Lancia pretty good if they draw like the backup Agonisters and stuff like that. This is still mandatory to play most side deck, especially since Orcus is getting released with Battle of Legends as well. Lancia also does hit the Orcus matchup as well, which is pretty nice. So this also deserves to be in there for that reason. But most of the time, you're just siding it because Malice exists. Chaos Hunter, this is always a weird one. A lot of people are scared of Malice, so this is going to get side decked. I don't know if I'm going to put it in most or some is the problem. You can make the argument it's probably in most side decks just because for some reason people are fucking scared of fucking Malice. I'm going to put it in some side decks. I don't think you necessarily need Chaos Hunter. I think the Lancia is probably perfectly fine, especially if you're playing like Meows with it as well. But you can make an argument for most side decks as well. It just depends on how scared of Malice you are. For me, I'm not necessarily the scaredest of Malice in the world. Like, it's still a very powerful deck, but I think like Lancia or even like Nib can still do a lot against it, while Chaos Hunter, like, they should have some outs, like if they play like Cerberus or Bomber Dragon, or if they're still on Metaltronus for some reason, like that's an out to this, or Droplet as well. So I don't know, I'm gonna put this in some side decks. The Bestials are going to be in some main decks. They're not going to be in most main decks, but this is like a dark format. Like Malice has a lot of dark monsters. Even though you don't necessarily want to banish them, they still are darks. And Mitsurugi is also one of those cards where, you know, being able to Bestial a Mitsurugi monster in the graveyard is still pretty nice. Now I'm going to put this in above Veiler and Shifter for sure. I think I'm going to put this like here, probably. Yeah, that's probably a fine enough spot. Like if you're on Malice, you're probably main decking this because they're just extenders for your deck as well. They're not going to be in most main decks, but they're for sure going to be in some main decks. DD Crow, Ghost Bell and Druid Swarm should be enough. Like DD Crow, you shouldn't also need DD Crow, but if you're scared of maybe like Mermail enough, maybe, I don't know. I'm going to put this in some side decks. It's not necessarily the greatest in the world. Token Collector, there's nothing generating tokens in this format. Dominus, the Dominus card. So Impulse is for sure in some main deck. Not every deck can take advantage of this, but if you're on pure Mitsurugi, you can play this. If you're on Malice, you can play this. And even if you're on like the new Orcus stuff as well, you can also play this stuff as well. I'm going to put this above Imperm, actually. I think this card is really, really good. Again, the only reason why I'm not putting it in most main decks is because not every deck can play Impulse, but a lot of the top decks can play it. So I'm going to put this above Imperm, maybe above Nib. Nah, I'm gonna keep it there. I'm gonna keep it there. I think that's a fine enough spot. Purge is the same thing, but not that many decks can play Purge right now is the problem. Like Blue Eyes is the only like real example of Purge. Maybe Voiceless Voice as well. I'm gonna put this like down here for sure. Like you could, like there are decks that can take advantage of it, but not as many decks as Impulse can take, or as decks as that can take advantage of Impulse. And then Songs of the Dominators is just not there yet. Again, I want this to be a card that's insane, but there just isn't a deck that has not come along just yet. So I'm going to put this in niche for now. I'm going to put this above like all these though. Yeah, like Ghost Arc probably has more application than Songs right now. But Songs is very much like, still has the very much potential as these Dominus cards like Purge and Impulse. But it's just not a deck can take advantage of it right now. Rescue Ace, Impulse, it's whatever. It's niche. There's better cards than this right now. Fantasme is a little bit of a weird one. I think it's actually in most side decks. Like I've seen a lot of people play this in their side decks just to like complement with the Charmy cards as well. But honestly, not a terrible card either. Like against Malice, like you can get a couple draws off of this as well. So it's not like terrible, but I think the Charmy cards are a little bit better. But I've seen a lot of people play Fantasme in their side deck. Singularity Fiend, it's just niche right now, unfortunately. I think this card can have some potential, like technically White Force can play it right now if they really want to. They're not going to, but like it's a niche card, but I think it could see play eventually, just not this format. Contact C is kind of the same thing. I think there's enough Link fodder in the game where Contact C just does not matter. Marionette Might is one of those cards, or like any card that's like this, like there's like a lot of cards that are like this. They're just terrible. I think any of the change of heart cards are kind of bad, especially like monsters that you have to discard for. Pretty bad. Crossout Designator. This is a weird one. If you're going to play it, you're probably going to main deck it. You're never really going to side deck Crossout. Crossout's in a weird position right now. Not going to lie. It's like in a very weird scenario because it is at 1. I still think you're going to put this in some main decks because the Charmy still exists and stuff like that. So he does have like the value. But I'm still going to put this like at the bottom of some main decks. Like there. No, it's better than Valor. There. Like there is probably fine. Called By, though, you can make a very much argument it is way better than Crossout because you don't need the target for it. Is it in most main decks, though? No, not really. I don't think so. Like Malice doesn't necessarily need a main deck this card. Maybe Mitsurugi would. I'm still going to put this in some main decks. I think I'm going to put this like there, probably. Nah, there. There's probably a perfect enough ratio. Salesband. This is one of the new cards that I had to add to the tier list here. Salesband is really popping off right now. A lot of people are in most side decks. Being able to, like, if you verse the Mitsurugi matchup, being able to go this, either calling Detonator to prevent Detonator from popping cards, even if Detonator pop itself, if it comes back, it's still under Salesband, or preventing Murakumo as well, preventing like the discard or stuff like that, or like trading for the Purification isn't terrible either. So this is like for like Mitsurugi exactly. But like it's still very decent. Like you can think of pretty much in any matchup, like you can call this. Even like going first, if you're like a deck that dies like to Droll or something like that, you can go Salesband, call Droll to make sure you just don't die to Droll. And I think this is probably better than like the Crossout because you don't need to necessarily have the targets for this either. But this isn't like a main, like some people might main deck this. I'm going to put it in most side decks for sure. I think it's like probably up here, to be honest with you. So I'm going to put it there. Triple Tactic Talents. Probably going to be in most main decks. It's a one of. If you draw it, it's fucking insane, to be honest with you. So I'm going to put this in most main decks. Thrust is probably going to be in most side decks as well. I'm going to put this like here, though. It's probably not, yeah, you can maybe make the argument in some side decks, but I'm going to put it in most side decks. The Castria stuff, like if you play this as an engine, it's cool, but Fenrier, it's just, I'm going to put this in some main decks, I guess. Like, it's still not terrible as an engine with, like, Unicorn and stuff. It's very fine. But, like, if it's just, like, Fenrier by itself, probably be down here, to be honest with you. But as an engine with, like, Unicorn, I think this is probably fine and put some main decks. Pinkertops, though, I'm sorry, bro. It's just not it. It's just not this format, brother. It really isn't. I'm going to put this in the... No, I'm going to put it in some side decks. I'm not going to be too harsh in it. Lava Golem, not that many decks can play this. Like, maybe exactly Labyrinth can play this. So I'm going to put this in niche. It's still a powerful card, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to put it in niche. Same thing with Kaiju. Same thing with Kurikara. Kind of the same situation with Lava Golem and stuff like that. Book of Eclipse, I can see in some side decks. It's not necessarily the greatest in the world, but against, like, Mitsurugi Rizal, being able to, like, Eclipse isn't terrible, but, like, I don't know. I think there's better cards than this, but I can still think this is a fine enough card. Book of Moon is a lot worse, but I don't think it deserves to be a niche, so I might put this in some side decks. Forbidden Droplet, however, I'm for sure putting you in some main decks. One of my favorite cards of all time, and it's making a resurgence. I think Droplet is very insane in this format. I'm actually going to put it like... I might put it like here, to be honest with you. I really like Droplet in this format. Like, Shifter is no longer in the format. Like, this card is fucking insane. I love this card so much. It's one of my, again, like I said, it's one of my favorite cards of our time, and I still think it's very playable in this format as well. So I'm going to put it in some main decks for sure. Dark Ruler No More has been seeing a lot of play in some side decks. I might put it in some side decks just because I don't think it deserves to be in most side decks. Like, I think it's probably going to be like here when it comes to some side decks. Like, a lot of people have been tinkering around with Dark Ruler No More, being able to, like, against Mitsurugi, like being able to Dark Ruler the Murakumo and the Detonator is pretty nice. The only problem with that is that, like, Prayer still exists, maybe Purification still exists as well, but being able to Dark Ruler, like, I'm going to put it at the bottom of most side decks. I don't know. I've seen a lot of people testing this card out a lot, so I'm going to put this in most side decks. Super Polymerization. So, I think this card is absolutely ridiculous in this format. I kind of hinted at this in the last tier list I did, that Super Poly I think is very good. Oh my god, this card is crazy. Like, I've been playing a lot of Mitsurugi Rizal at, like, regionals. I got 2 third-place finishes, one in Lubbock, one in Aurora. I got 2 third-place finishes at both of those regionals, and I was using Super Poly, and to be honest with you, Super Poly was kind of insane. But not everyone is on Super Poly is the problem. But, in my opinion, they fucking should, because Super Poly is very, very, very good. I think it's up here with Forbidden Droplet. That's where I think this is currently at. My bad. The camera's kind of cutting off some main decks there. I'm going to try to be a little bit better with that. But I think Super Poly is really fucking good this format. Don't get me, especially with like something like Orcus entering in as well. That's just like all dark. Super Poly is fucking insane. That's what I'm saying. Super Poly is fucking insane. I'm gonna put it there. Ultimate Slayer. I think this is probably more towards some side decks. Gordian Slicer. Again, it's probably going to be in some side decks. A very decent card, but a lot of decks neither, like, unless you're playing exactly pure Mitsurugi, I don't think this is necessarily the greatest in the world for every deck. So I'm going to put this in some side decks. Metaltronus has kind of fallen off as well. I'm going to put this in some side decks as well. Herald the Abyss, I'm sorry, you're niche. Same thing with Mind Control. Same thing with Change of Heart. Same thing with Snatch Steal. Again, like I said, I think the Change of Heart cards isn't necessarily the greatest in the world right now. Econ maybe is a little bit better because, like, it may be a Mitsurugi Rizal, being able to tribute your guys to take control. You still get the tribute and get their effects off, which is nice. That's like the only advantage compared to all the others. So I might put this in some side decks just because that tribute effect only matters for exactly Mitsurugi, and that is it. I'm gonna actually put this like that. Yeah, like that. Reeki, honestly, I don't think it's necessarily the greatest in the world either. Dark Hole is kind of in the same scenario. Cosmic, you might see in some side decks, and the only reason I'm saying that is because Lightning Storm and Feather Duster are in most side decks because they're just back row removal. Hell, even a lot of people have dropped the Lightning Storm and just play the one Feather Duster with like thrusts. It just depends on how you want to see it. But I think that's a perfect enough ratio. Evenly Match. Again, Omni Negates are kind of back in the format, unfortunately. So I think Evenly also belongs in some side decks. I'm going to put it more at the top, but that's where I have it. D-Barrier is there as well for most side decks. I believe Daruma is more of a niche card. This is more, if you play Labyrinth, is cool, but just more of a niche card. DDG, probably in some side decks as well as a going first tool, is kind of not bad. Judgment and Strike I can see in most side decks as well. These are very good cards. Warning, we're seeing a little bit of earlier in the format was being played like a testing a little bit, but I think the more deeper we got into the format, a lot of people are just figured out this is just not worth it. Still don't think it's terrible, so I'm gonna put it like there. Anti-Spell Fragrance, some side decks maybe is probably fine. Same thing with all the floodgates. I think Rivalry, Tikaboo, goes in match, and there can be only one. I think all deserve to be in some side decks as well. They're definitely better than the No Warning's better than that. We'll put it like this. Sorry. Let me just do it like this. My apologies. There we go. And that is it for the tier list. Let me kind of correct it on my camera here so you can see stuff. Okay, so in most main decks, I have Fua, Pirellia, Astral, and Talents. I think that's pretty much a fine enough ratio. I think every deck list that you see, this is going to be most main decks are like non-engine, which is very nice. For some main decks, you have Nib, Impulse. Impulse is only here because not every deck can take advantage of it. Called by, Droplet, Super Poly. I'm the one that put it in here. Maybe you can make an argument that's not the greatest, but I think Super Poly is fucking insane, and I will fucking die on the hill with that one. Imperm, a lot of the time I like to put in most main decks, but I think in this format, you can make an argument Imperm isn't the greatest in the world. Still very good, don't get me wrong, but like maybe not the greatest. The Bestials, Ghost Bell, Crossout, Veiler, Shifter, if you can play Shifter, Purge, if you can play Purge, and like the Castria as like an engine, belongs in some main decks, which I think is a fine enough ratio. For most side decks, Artifact Lancia, Salesband, Meows, that's what this card is called. Thrust, Fantasme, Lightning Storm, Feather Duster, Dark Ruler No More, Judgment, Strike, and D-Barrier. I think it's a fine enough card for the most side decks. For some side decks, you got Chaos Hunter, Ultimate Slayer, Evenly Matched, Gordian Slicer, Metaltronus, Book of Eclipse, Econ, DDG, Solemn Warning, Anti-Spell, Skill Drain, There Can Be Only One, Rivalry, Goes in, Cosmic, Spooky Dogwood, DD Crow, Pankratops, and Book of Moon. I think that's also perfectly fine as well. And for niche, Ghost Org, maybe it might be a little harsh, but again, this is a card that you're not going to side deck, and I don't think it's necessarily the greatest right now in this format. So I'm going to put this in niche, maybe a little harsh, but I'm going to go with that. Songs of the Dominators, I just don't think there's a deck that can take advantage of this just yet because of the restriction. It's very hard. Ghost Reapers, very bad. Gamma, Delta, I want to like this package, but Gamma being at 1 kind of sucks. Orange Light, there's not a fairy deck. Token Collectors, there's not a deck that's summoning tokens. Impulse, there's just better cards like Fantasme and Charmies. Singularity Fiend, again, nothing great. Contact C, Marionette, My Lava Golem, Kaiju, Kurikara, nothing really there for that. Herald of the Abyss. The Mind Control cards like Change of Heart and Snatch Steal, Dark Hole, Reeki, Dark Hole, and Jaruma Kama in niche. I think that's pretty much fine as well. So that is it for the video. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe for more content on the channel, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.